turns out that frogs, like I mentioned before, are incredibly diverse. So over 7,000 species. And many of them are nocturnal, so they live, they only come out at night. But there are some that come out during the daytime, and many of the ones that come out in the daytime have really, really bright colors. And the blue frogs, or the poison dart frogs, is one type of blue. There are many blue frogs, actually, but one type is called the poison dart frog. And the reason they're called that is because the native people in the Amazon in South America used to capture these frogs and take little darts and roll them on the skin of the frog, and they'd use that to shoot monkeys out of the trees. And it's because these frogs are incredibly toxic. They have neurotoxins on their skin. So they wear their armor basically on the outside of their skin. That's one of the things that makes frogs or amphibians different from other vertebrates, is that they have special glands that produce defensive compounds, mostly toxins, that if something tries to bite them, they get the toxin in their mouth, and then what happens to that predator is that their muscles stop working. So they can't bite, and they stop breathing. So some of them are really, really dangerous, actually. And most of the ones that are dangerous are out in the daytime. So they're flaunting their colors. They have very bright either reds or blues or oranges, and they're basically showing off their poisonousness, in a sense. Is that a word?
Far too many people often say things like, animals do this, but we don't. Or it's, this animal does this and that animal does this, but the humans don't do things like that. Those statements have some hidden assumption that we're not animals. When we say animals do this, animals do that, we often assume that we're not animals. If we're not animals, what are we? Are we plants or trees or flowers? No, we're not. Then, okay, we're not plants. Then are we microorganisms, really tiny microscopic things? No, we're not. Then the natural conclusion must be we're not living things. Well, that's not true. Yes, we are animals. And I see animals in us, and I see humans in animals. So I'm going to talk about the animal behavior and human nature. In order to understand human nature, we can look into animals' eyes and animal behavior and find something about what made us who we are.
Another thing that you can do is have controlled processing. Try to train yourself to be a little bit more mindful of people that differ from you. So suppress your prejudiced beliefs or challenge them. Actively think about them and try and control the way that you think about the world and that processing that you might have. Another thing is to be open-minded. Be open to new things. Don't make up your mind before you have enough evidence to do so. So always try and be open to new possibilities, new people, new ideas, new whatever, and try not to, again, make conclusions maybe before you have enough evidence. Another thing that will help with everything we've mentioned so far is to have improved group contact.
Chưa kịp điện.
Chromosomes are found in the nucleus of cells. Now, a key fact is that chromosomes contain the molecule DNA. Scientists say that DNA is a genetic material, and that's because our DNA determines our inherited features. I'm showing you the structure of DNA here. I should point out that this is a simplified structure, but it covers all the points that you need for combined science. DNA consists of 2 strands, and each strand is a polymer. In other words, each strand is made by joining together lots of smaller molecules. Now, in DNA, the 2 strands wrap around each other to form a double helix. And it's really important that you learn the term double helix, as that's a very common exam question.
Listen to the recording and answer the multiple choice question by selecting the correct response. Only one response is correct.
Metaphysical literature has not received the attention that it deserved. Mostly, metaphysical literature is dismissed as absurd and nonsensical. However, to understand metaphysical works of people like John Donne, one needs to have an open mind and should be creative and willing to understand abstract concepts. Metaphysical poetry is an era in itself. John Donne has been one of the greatest poets of his time. He has very audaciously put forward his ideas. His imagination goes beyond the possible. The most remarkable aspect of his works is the astonishing ease with which he pens down his imagination. His works create a vivid picture in the mind and move on in a smooth flow. John Donne attacked the society with its corrupt legal system. He described disease, vomit, manure, sickness, to satirically talk about the prosperous society of his time. He also dealt with the problems of true religion. Donne said that we need to question our religious beliefs.
Listen to the recording and answer the multiple choice question by selecting the correct response. Only one response is correct.
Over the years, our ecosystem has developed ingenious ways to process and store natural waste products like nutrients, sediments, bacteria and heavy metals. Water purification in nature is done through a variety of ecosystems, including streams, wetlands, estuaries and forests. Most noticeable are the wetlands and the riparian plant communities. They efficiently purify water. They filter sediments and debris from floods, waste products from aquatic and terrestrial plants and animals. They also filter minerals, metals and microorganisms before these can reach faster moving waters such as rivers.
A further example of endangered species is the shark. Around 40 million sharks are killed each year. That's quite a lot. Consequently, the number of sharks is decreasing. So let's take a closer look at the causes of this. Firstly, in recent decades, sharks have become important. This is largely due to the growing popularity in some parts of the world for the consumption of shark. It has become a very valuable food source. OK, so maybe you're thinking, well, lots of other fish like cod, salmon or tuna are caught for human consumption and they aren't disappearing at the same rate as sharks. Well, that's true, but the difference here is sharks are not able to repopulate or reproduce themselves quickly like the other types of fish that are commonly fished as a food source. Why? Because sharks are slow breeders. Sharks mature slowly and it takes them years to reach the age for egg production, and then they produce only a few eggs, so that means just a few new sharks. Humans have a 9-month pregnancy or gestation period, whereas some shark species are thought to have extremely long gestation periods, as long as 3 years. This makes them much more vulnerable and in danger of dying out than many other fish species.
Practice Test 4, page 138, section 2. Multiple choice. Choose multiple answers. Listen to the recording and answer the question by selecting all the correct responses. You will need to select more than one response. Recording A.
Noises are defined as disagreeable sounds, but this suggests that they are no more than an annoyance, something to be put up with. There is increasing evidence that noise, on the scale that people who live in big cities have to deal with, is dangerous and can give rise to serious health and social problems, some of which, such as its effects on people's behaviour and anger levels, you might not have thought were caused by noise and are health concerns. There is, of course, the almost constant noise of traffic, though this isn't a particularly modern problem. In ancient Rome, there were rules to minimise the noise made by the iron wheels of wagons, which battered the stones on the pavement, causing disruption of sleep. Traffic noise is one of the health hazards, as it can lead to other problems like noise-induced hearing impairment. It is also highly distracting.
Trời, chưa hết bài nữa đó.
According to ecologists, having a personality means showing a consistent pattern of behavior over time. Researchers from the University of Arizona studied colonies of rock ants across the western US, both by following them in the wild and by taking whole colonies back to the lab. They found that certain risky behaviors, like foraging widely for food and responding aggressively to a threat, went together, and colonies further north tended to take more of these risks. The study suggests those more adventurous personalities could be an adaptation to the limited window of activity left by the long, snowy northern winter.
You will hear a recording. Click on the paragraph that best relates to the recording.
Nature Cure aims not only at preventing a disease, but also at helping an individual in maintaining good health for the rest of his life. You see, it's actually a philosophy of looking at life, health and disease through the lens of nature. It is also aimed at finding the relationship between these, and it tries to cure the root of the disease rather than just giving it a quick fix cure like other medicinal practices. Its most characteristic feature is that naturopathy offers such simple and natural means to cure a problem that any disease may possibly be tackled without using drugs and other scientific methods.
Wow, that sounds pretty interesting. But how would you define the theory on which it works? What is the real principle behind it?
Well, the basic principle on which naturopathy works is that nature itself does the reconstruction, rebuilding and repairing of the body. Not only that, it also cleanses the system of the various disorders developed due to our modern and fast lifestyle. You see, for example, boils, pimples, eruptions, etc.
You will hear a recording about Napoleon. At the end of the recording, the last word or group of words has been replaced by a beep. Select the correct option to complete the recording.
Napoleon's invasion of Russia led to a disastrous retreat. The war began to turn in favor of the Allied powers. In March 1814, Paris fell, and Napoleon went into exile on the Mediterranean island of Elba. It was in March 1815 that he marched on the capital of France. But this brief reign ended with the Battle of Waterloo. The British imprisoned him on the remote Atlantic island in St. Helena, where he breathed his last on 5th May 1821. As a military commander, his strength lay in the effective organization of his army. He would make excellent use of a large army. He would devise new plans for each battle, so that no one would know what to expect. No one could figure out what
You will hear a recording about interaction. At the end of the recording, the last word or group of words has been replaced by a beep. Select the correct option to complete the recording.
Generally, when we meet a person known to us, we ask him, "How are you?" And he gives us the same mundane reply, "I'm fine." Sometimes, however, if we find our friend a little unhappy, we ask him another question in quick succession to the first one. "Why do you look so sad? Is anything bothering you?" On the other hand, if our friend looks happy, we say, "You were looking very happy. Anything special today?" The big question is, how do we come to know whether he is?
Citizenship is about the role that individuals play within that system. To understand how the system works, that is the government and democracy, you need to understand civics. To be an active and informed citizen, you need not only to know that, but need to know what it means to be an active citizen in civic life and the engagement that comes with that.
A special aspect about civics and citizenship is to learn about their rights and then, of course, the exercise of those rights and responsibilities in their society.
The 21st century is going to place increasing demands on young children and young students generally.
So to look inside and see things that you couldn't see without this device. And you'll recognize some of the parts of the image. You can see the rib cage here, the bones. You can see the heart is this large bright object down here. If you're have good eyesight from the distance that you're at, you can see the vessels leading out of the heart and into the lungs, and the lungs are these darker spaces within the rib cage.
Most of the students have not considered this issues before.
Rising inflation will increase the demand, price, and the consumption of products.
All dissertations must be accompanied by a submission form.